Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Welcome back to the show. We are joined by our Professional of the Year. Big congratulations to Grant and Venerable, who, wow, has many accolades. And he joins us today as a doctor, as a professor, as a chemist, as an author, to, of course, discuss the latest and the greatest. And we're going to also open up the phone lines just to let you all know. So let me have Grant say hello for himself and tell you a little bit about his story, who he is, what he does, and then we'll get started with today's topics. Go ahead, Grant.
Okay, well, I'm getting my multiple thoughts together here. As soon as I adjust this screen a little better. And my topic today is entitled Catching the Sunset Wave. And that's because of the most beautiful sunset I've seen in many years last evening. And that has really got me quite energized here. I'm good into my surfing metaphors.
Aww.
Let's see if I can show you a little of this.
You're going to share your screen?
I'm going to see if this will show up here.
Awesome.
There. Can you see that?
Nope, I cannot. Did you hit the share screen button? On the bottom of the screen, there should be like a green, says share with an arrow up. I'm not
share.
sure. Yeah, hit share.
Okay, comment, insert, attach, photo, write a comment. Well, I can't quite see where I would. Let me try this. Come back to my screen with you. Okay.
Yeah, if I hit the word share, you can share my screen. So do you see the share button or no?
No, I've got a, oh, I guess you're still there. Can you hear me?
Yes, hi.
Oh, there you are.
Yep.
Okay. And there's a share down here somewhere. Leave apps. Well, view recording. Well, I'll just describe it. The sunset stretched across a large expanse of the sky to the west of where I am in Yucca Valley. Could see about 45 miles to the west end of the valley to Mount San Jacinto, which is about it's about 10,500 feet to its elevation. It was filled with deep, rich blood reds, purples, oranges.
Oh, wow.
And it was inspiring. It made me ask some questions. And the first question was, it relates to my memoir. The memoir is the background to everything just about that I talk about. It has to do with what makes us feel the way we do at any given moment of time. And I was in such a euphoria, altered state of consciousness around 6:45 Pacific Daylight Time yesterday. And I had just taken a swim in the pool at the top of my housing complex, and just the the energy worked up by the swim and the cold water. I guess it was about 78 degrees. And the air wasn't very warm last night because we'd had some storms earlier in the day, and it wasn't its usual 90
Mm-hmm.
degrees. It was more like, upper 70 degrees. So all that affected how I felt. But the memoir is really a series of stories about my life, about the lives of my relatives, my family, my ancestors, my friends, my teachers. And it really explained to me why I felt the way I did, given the status of the nation and what people feel that they're going through
Mm-hmm.
today, this week, last week. Uh, my what I was experiencing just belied all of that because I was in euphoria and all was well. That was the whole message of the
Right.
sunset.
Hold on. I think
All
we have
is
a
well.
caller. Hello. Welcome to the show. Are you live on the line? Who's this?
This is Leo. I'm on Long Island. Good afternoon. I was just curious to
Leo.
know, it's kind of maybe a little bit dramatic, but I do sit and watch the sunset every day, and reflect on my day. The question, the concern is, have you ever watched like the sunset, as beautiful as it is, and leave with a negative feeling?
Oh, did you hear that, Grant? He always watches the sunset. Leo,
That was there was a
did you say it leaves you with a negative
there was a
feeling?
question at
Leave
the
instead of with a happy, fulfilled, feeling like a negative feeling.
I
Oh,
was
okay. Go
I
ahead.
was euphorically happy.
Okay,
I'll
okay.
put it like that.
Now, can I ask though? He's asking
It
Grant.
was,
He felt
you know,
very sad.
I couldn't I couldn't have paid for a drug to have done the same
Okay.
thing. It was all from the nature of myself, what was inside me, and my
Uh-huh.
circumstances, going back to my
Now,
birth
yeah,
and
I would
even
definitely say
before.
that probably play a major role in the feeling, in the after feeling. Yeah.
Yeah, it it said it was like announcing to the world, at least to my world, all is well. Do not fret yourself. And this, of
Right. So,
course,
it's pretty much all
belies.
from within.
Any advice to him, Grant, on maybe why the sunset is making him sad? I don't know if you heard
I
that. Yeah.
I know exactly what was going on.
Uh-oh, tell
I
us.
was reaching in my brain without knowing it. It was just quite subconscious for every experience that I've ever had in my
Right.
life. And
Yeah.
everything
You can mix it
pointed
up. Mhm.
to that moment. And it's not something I can scientifically explain, but I can existentially explain that
Wow. Yeah. But I
um,
understand. I understand.
I have had similar moments. They're not all exactly alike, but it's like catching a wave at Santa
Right.
Monica Beach or Malibu Beach and riding
Uh-huh.
that wave and being in a whole different space, sensing what wave to catch, where to be. And it just is like lighting up my whole life. So
Wow.
I'm ready to move forward with all of my projects that I've been uh, designated to perform. So
Okay.
it
Okay.
was so
So,
special.
yeah. So
So
instead of looking back, just look forward. Right. Okay.
yes, um,
That was wonderful. Thank you.
yes, you're welcome.
Thank you, Leo. 631-307-4010. Thank you so much. Anyone else out there, give us a call, 631-307-4010. All right, thanks so much. So, it's sad, right? When some people don't see the beauty that we may see during a sunset. He was saying how negative he felt and not well. Does that ring a bell to some? Is that something going on with us? Is it depression, anxiety? What could be wrong if we're seeing that sunset and not thinking it's beautiful?
it was a moment of surrender, of surrendering my life to the highest principles in this universe. And I made notes about it last night, and which has carried me through the morning. I'm trying to make them out. What's going on with myself in the sunset was a word called resonance. Also, what was in my mind from this resonance was that this resonance was a transfer, a connection of energy between myself and that moment
Mm-hmm.
of the sunset. And I would say several thousand years ago,
Yeah.
what has happened in every desert on this planet? What happens between the sunsets, the sunrises, the daytimes, and the elder people who lived on those deserts? And
Yeah.
I'm going to call out the word desert father. There's an Aramaic word, Abba, Abba. That's the desert father.
Mm-hmm.
Desert father is terminology and westernization. The desert fathers had experiences that could be described as nothing less than psychedelic. And in those moments of that euphoria, words came to them, and the words had to do with really the meaning of their setting, the desert, and their lives. What's this about? This was
Mm-hmm.
like 10,000, 15,000, 20,000 years ago by best estimates. But it was so compelling, they began to write it down with their early languages. In that case, it was Aramaic, it was Hebrew, it was Greek in the Judean desert.
Mm-hmm.
And those documents became what were known as the Dead Sea Scrolls
Yeah.
once they were discovered. The first ones were discovered around maybe 100 to 200 AD, also called CE, meaning Common Era.
Mm-hmm.
And then those were interpreted and translated from the Hebrew and the Aramaic
Wow.
and the Greek later into English, which became the King James Bible. And there were other translations of it. So those were like signals
Wow.
to the inhabitants of our civilization in modern times that
Mm-hmm.
was there were words to the effect that this is the universe, this is the creation of the universe, there's a creator of this universe, here's a description of the creator, and what is our purpose here? All that was coming to me in observing the sunset. And it was like many people have described as being on the best psychedelic mind altering substances known to human beings, particularly in indigenous cultures, our Native American cultures, all the way down to the tip of South America and into African cultures, Asian, Euro-Asian, Afro-Asian, Asian Indian, all those cultures. But and the myths, myth, myth, that's not the usual way myth really is it functions. A myth is a construction of meaning that comes to us in important moments. And some of them are fairly nice stories. There's, of course, the Greek mythologies. Sometimes they're called fairy tales about scientifically, since we don't have a science, how does the earth, the sun go across the sky in the daytime? So that was Apollo, the god Apollo. And then there were the other gods, like my last name, Venerable, is derived from the Latin name Venus, and the genitive, the possessive, of that Latin word is veneris, which means of Venus. So venerable really is based upon the word for love, and certainly the goddess of love. So all that's pouring into my mind, my soul, my heart, while this sunset was going on. But also, I was thinking of the Desert Fathers and the topics that have come up for all of the wise people over the ages. The things I wanted to start to focus on now at this uh, point of progress in my podcasting is how language is used. Language can be used creatively, developmentally, constructively. It can also be used abusively. When we allow ourselves to be in an environment of constructive, creative use of words, language, phrases, that affects another part of our brain that governs how we think, how we believe, and how we behave. When, however, we invest in the abusive use of language, which I learned more about from my linguistic professorial friends, uh, we get the opposite effects. And if we take on technologies that pour abusiveness, abusive images, no matter whose images they are, into our brain memory, that's what we tend to create in our lives. Religion came out of the constructive use of language, but that language evolved through what the Hebraic rabbis referred to as the Torah, which fed into the Old Testament, but also the Talmud. And the Talmud was this beautiful, powerful methodology that these rabbinical scholars developed over 2,000 years and more, through which they reinvestigated existing scripture to look at possible reinterpretations that would improve it. As a result, of course, if they could do that, it would improve the quality of their lives. So this was something special because you're interrogating something you cannot see. It's invisible. There's a presence, if I could call it that. It was so powerful. And right there, they dared not give it a name. They dare not call it a name. Not today, words like God, Jehovah, Yahweh, it's ripe with words like that. But the rabbinical scholars said, no, we can't. This is too powerful and beautiful a terminology to try to put a name to it. So for them, it was the invisible. It was the unknown. Somewhere around the part of the Reformation in the 1600s, 1700s had to do with scientists who developed in the Judaic tradition, who had been schooled in synagogues, began to apply the Talmud to the discovery of science, scientific principle, gravitation, gravity, Newton, Galileo, and then further along, alchemy, chemistry, then the whole field of physics. And of course, you cannot see whatever it is you're interrogating because it like God, is invisible and it's hard to give it a name. But that's how my field developed in chemical physics. And So that's what was coming up for me during the sunset. Uh, and I'm also having to remind myself of what I wanted to cover even more was the word melanin. What is melanin? Uh, that would be something for our listeners, our viewers to grapple with. Melanin, aside from blood and tissue, may be the most important substance in human and animal existence because melanin does what? It gives coloration to the skin of living organisms, all organisms that crawl or swim, that have color or fly. And those colors are in a range from, I would say, yellow to tan to brown to dark brown to black. And humans evolved and picked up color based upon their needs to adapt to different environments. Now, there's some things that haven't gotten out, and I intend to put them out on the airways right now so that people can begin to look them up for themselves. But what we call eumelanin, which starts with the prefix EU, is Greek, which means good. And we see that in the word eulogy when we're giving the good word about someone's life after they pass away. But eumelanin was literally good melanin because it was the richest, darkest colored melanin. And then there were other varieties of melanin in the chemical system. And one was, well, how did people on the desert withstand the sun? The deserts were very hot and very bright. And if they did not put good clothing on, wrap themselves and their heads, their bodies, they could die of heat stroke, a sunstroke. But the people who developed in the tropical areas south of the Sahara Desert lived in very dark rainforests that hardly any of the sunlight got through. But conventional wisdom and belief thinks that the sunlight causes the skin to become black or dark brown. And that was not what really happened. The anthropologists who took a look at that in the 20th century began to realize it was a survival mechanism, just as the desert people tended to develop more of a tan and a red-brown complexion, which allowed them to survive in the intense heat. But the rainforest people developed very dark brown to black complexions, particularly
Hi,
in
we have
Africa.
another call. Hello, welcome to the show. You are live on the line with Grand Venerable. Who's calling?
Hey, this is Kenneth. How's it going, guys?
Good, Kenneth. How are you? Grant's here, and of course, ready to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, great. I was wondering, I'm looking at like the sunset or the sunrise. If you guys think there's any like connection or if you feel any connection or any sign, maybe watching the sun or the sunrise, things like that.
Any connections? What's happening when we're looking at that sunrise and, sunset when you were talking about that before as well. So connections meaning like what are you specifically getting to? Go ahead. What do you feel?
Yeah, exactly. Maybe if there's signs that'll tell you more about like your every like day-to-day life or anything like advice in general. If you think if watching the sunset could bring anything like that.
I think that gets into the area of philosophy and in psychology. And it gets into the area of what we call meaning. I think that's what you're asking, Kenneth, is what is the meaning of this beautiful sunset. And
Yeah.
it's something everyone has to determine and does determine relative to their own lives, because they will get inspirations that bring up images for them in their own life. It will remind them of relatives, friends, perhaps from a long time ago, maybe from very recently, from experiences recent and a long time ago. But all of that is prefigured by the neurochemistry that is going on in their bloodstreams and their brains. And it's those neurohormones like the endorphins, the neurotransmitter substances that begin to shape that meaning in our individual selves. And someone else will attach completely different meanings depending upon the neurohormones that they are producing in their bloodstreams, in their brains, in their nervous systems. Does that help?
Yeah, yeah, of course. I'm really glad I called today. Um, wasn't expecting that, but that's more than what I was asking for. So I really appreciate your help with the question. Thank you guys
Thank you so much. You have a fantastic day. We appreciate it.
as well.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you. We are here talking. Grant Venerable, our professional of the year. Let's continue the conversation. The lines are still open, 631-307-4010. If you have any questions, that's 631-307-4010. Go ahead, Grant.
Where we left off here is melanin, which is a
Yes.
chemical.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a course I taught at San Francisco State University in the 1990s because it was something that the uh, School of Ethnic Studies and the curriculum people knew young people had to come to grips with understanding because it shapes their views of what we call race. But melanin, studying its properties and its synthesis in the skin, in the epidermis, that outside layer of the skin, it, it determines our survivability on planet Earth.
Yeah.
But another thing it tells us is that it explains the universality of humankind. All people are one race, and it is called human
Yeah.
or Homo sapiens. But there are geographic differences in racial groups, but they're not distinctly different races, which you and I, Jill, talked last time about how that changed. And prior to the 1600s, 1500s, people actually viewed race more accurately, scientifically accurately. They didn't know they were, but they were. They used culture and nationality as race. So wherever your ancestors come from geographically, that was considered a race. Like people from Sweden were in the Swedish race, which was very close, mind you, to the Norwegian and the Finnish races and the Danish race, as it were, the Lithuanian race. And then there were people in Italy, and there were so many different cultures in Italy.
Mm-hmm.
And so loosely speaking, those were races. But during when the physical anthropologists came along in the 1700s, they were asked by the political leadership of their day in Europe because of what the people on the sailing ships were discovering, that there were strange looking people who looked different from Europeans all over the world, from Asia to Australia to South America to North America. And, well, of course, capitalism was beginning to develop. How can people be utilized to make money? It's simple as that. And in Africa, it became very specifically, well, what if we try to convince these people to come over to the New World, North America, the Caribbean, South America, and be our servants? Well, that had some problems with it because people wanted to stay home where they were.
Mm-hmm.
And so the European traders said, well, I guess we'll just have to take them. So that's what they did. They were able to talk to other tribal groups and can't you get us some folks, your neighbors, and capture them?
Uh-huh.
And
Mm.
then we'll trade them. We'll trade some goods with you to take those people on big ships to the New World. Well, that didn't sit well with the Christian sensibilities and the Jewish sensibilities of Europeans. So the real, practical minded traders said, well, we have to justify it. And the best way to justify it is to use religion to justify it. So we have to figure out some way to show that these people are humanly inferior to us in Europe. And so that's where all of the rules about what race is got written. And it was based upon skin color and facial type and cranial shape and all kinds of stuff like that. And that was used to say, oh, okay, so it's okay to take these people. So those people included a high percentage of my ancestors in the United States, along with the high percentage of European ancestors and Native American ancestors who, you know, congealed into a whole different cultural thinking. So that's what I represent in my whole philosophy, my teaching, and how I view chemistry. So that's the long and the short of it. And I wanted to make sure that people at least begin to hear that so that we can begin to come out of that and undo. And I think that's what's happening right now. And it's become a very political issue because some people on one side don't want to undo that because it's to their benefit to hold power and make money. And to another side, it is not to their benefit for that to happen because technology has pushed us to a much higher level of opportunity to determine our own lives. I mean, if you look at the James Watt telescope and the Hubble telescope, that changed our whole view of the universe. We know that there's like 900 billion stars, as it were, in the Milky Way where we live. We live at the outer fringe of the Milky Way in one of those arms of the Milky Way that trails off in the distance. But as we look at our night sky, we see that part of the Milky Way that's in the bulk of where the stars and the galaxies and the nebulas live. So it looks quite thick. It looks like milk when we look up, and we can see that from the desert right out where I live now. And if you stand there at least 15 minutes for your eyes to adapt to the darkness, suddenly the brain is able to perceive these stars we can't see ordinarily with the naked eye. It's just like it jumps out at us and it overwhelms us. And this is just too beautiful for descriptive words. So I want to talk about, just to put that out there for our attention, there's other ways that we can glorify our reality here in our mortal lives as opposed to abusing our reality. So again, words come in, the words that we use. And one of those areas of words is how we treat our children. How do we treat someone else's children? How do we treat each other? So there's words that are words of caring for for empathizing with. And that creates the good part of our relationship with children. And then there's words, if we sink into those, they abuse children. And there's certain words that describe abuse that horrify people all over the world when it occurs. There's other kinds of abuse. There's drugs. There's good drugs and there's bad drugs. And those all appear like in the prequel to my memoir, how they figured into helping us survive, as well as uh, how we move forward, make progress in our lives as people from different parts of the world and meeting up with each other in different parts and the same parts of the world. You can think for yourself, like it's now in the health professions. It's become controversial. That's important for me. The word is vaccine. And the meaning of vaccine can either be glorified, developed, or can be abused. And I don't have to explain who's abusing it and who's glorifying it. But I can tell you, I would not be sitting here speaking to any of us, any of you out there, had I not had a life-saving vaccine that I was given in late 1942 when I was 6 weeks of age. And my parents one night noticed I was having problems breathing, and they called the doctor. Well, that's when doctors made home visits. Thank the Lord. They made home visits. And our family doctor came. He says, this boy, this baby is suffering from diphtheria. I think most people have heard of diphtheria, but he wrote a prescription, gave it to my father at 2 o'clock in the morning. So, that's a very special kind of story because my father had to dip into his information resources to find a pharmacy that was open at 2 o'clock in the morning in the middle of World War II. He found it. He found the vaccine, brought it home. He and my mother administered it to me. And within an hour, my lungs opened up and I began to breathe normally again. So you could say that was a close call and that it shaped the rest of my life. In fact, we all carry memory in our brains of experiences like that. And I know whenever I've had certain allergies and would have a little bit of lung congestion, unconscious memories of the diphtheria event would come through and they would cause me a little bit of panic, but not completely. So that brings us back to my forward when I started the conversation about, okay, well, why am I feeling so good? Why was I feeling so good with this sunset? Realizing all is well in the world. It is well with me. And that's the only world I can speak about from personal experience. Now, if everyone on this planet began to address their lives in a way that the glorification predominated and the abuse and the lack of caring subsided, everyone at the same moment would have that same euphoria. And they would know in the sunset that all is well. Well, that I want to put that out and just sit with that for a moment.
And the lines
I
are
thought it was
open 631-307-4010. If you want to give us a call, that's 631-307-4010. Thanks. Just wanted to get that in. So, what else did you want your audience to know? We do have 15 minutes left in the show, Grant.
Well, I think this is a truism that there is enough pain and suffering in the world because there's abuse of whole peoples, nations of people by war, which is an ultimate human abuse. And
Mm-hmm.
that's going on as we speak. What does that tell us to do? What does that uh, well, I've addressed that with friends. Well, Grant, what do we do? We're having this issue, this challenge. My family's having such and such going on. Because we're not the controllers in this universe or in our lives. We find ways to have experience. I mean, some kind of control over our lives to improve their quality. I've done that
Yeah.
uh, by my own testimony to the psychotherapy that
Mm-hmm.
I've enjoyed on a steady basis since since I was the vice president for academic affairs in some of the great universities of this society. Well, that's because next to government politics, universities are the most intensive centers for politics in the country, but
Yeah.
probably in the world. And probably it isn't because people are trying to be negative or bad or over competitive, but it is a competitive environment.
Mm-hmm.
And you have unnecessary competition when you don't learn what therapy can teach you about your own inner selves, the parts of your inner self. And the main offender is the ego, which Sigmund Freud gave the Western world such a special knowledge about. It
Mm-hmm.
isn't that the ego is bad,
Yeah.
it's when we don't keep it in healthy condition, when we're overwhelmed
Mm-hmm.
by thinking we're an identity that we're not, that we're in competition with somebody else. And we don't have to be in
Nope.
competition. We can actually be in cooperation.
Oh.
I'm going to spell that out. CO hyphen operation, O operation, so that we live in a win-win society. You can have whatever it is you want to have. I can have whatever it is I want to have and do it without
Wow.
denying someone else of having what they want.
Ah.
So I've enjoyed my life in universities down south in Atlanta, at the Atlanta University Center Schools of Spelman, Morehouse, Morris Brown, Clark, Atlanta, Morehouse School of Medicine, and then going to be senior vice president at Lincoln University in Pennsylvania. That's some of the most beautiful country in the world in Southwest Pennsylvania. And
Wow.
its country, incidentally, is only 100 miles from where the John Brown raided Harper's Ferry, if you've heard of that
Wow. Yep.
story. It was a very important story, and it was a Civil War battlefield. And there were Civil War battles going on not that far from southern Pennsylvania. There was a lady named Harriet Tubman who
Mm-hmm.
inhabited the territory
Yep.
between, Maryland, it was her home, but she would make excursions into the Deep South
Mm-hmm.
and she would go on plantations and get people to leave. And she would sing songs on her
Mm-hmm.
way in, like Swing Low, Sweet Chariots, and Coming for to carry me home, which meant, come on, folks, it's time to go north.
Mm-hmm.
And so we be going north to southern Pennsylvania once we get through Maryland. And Lincoln University was like located only 10 miles from where 4 states were conjoined. So you'd be on Highway 896 from Highway I-95, and you could go through the state of Maryland, you go through the state of Delaware, the state of Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
I think there might have been another state. I might be missing a state. But that always amazed me as a native Californian, where it's so big. You could go up Highway 101 for over 900 miles without leaving the state of California. But back east, the states are smaller territories. They're so close together. But that was part of the joy of being at Lincoln, was all this beautiful New England scenery that we see featured on Christmas cards, particularly when snow was out there.
Yeah.
And Lincoln was one of the oldest universities in the United States, founded in 1854.
Wow.
And but the every university has such great challenges, and so I was engaged in dealing with challenges. And one was at the beginning of the school year is when the new freshmen arrive. Their parents bring them to the campus, which is a very emotional moment for the parents and very exciting for the youngsters because they're away from home, probably for the first time from their families. Well, one of the things I, as the provost, that the provost is the single word title for senior vice president for academic affairs, and I address the parents just to address their questions because they want to know what are they leaving their children with by coming to the university, and their main fear was their religious faith. These people were very deeply religious, and they did not want their children losing their deep beliefs in God. Well, God is a pretty universal concept in the United States and the Western world. Everyone has a different way of believing it, handling it. And so I was the one they asked, well, how is our child going to keep their faith? And I told them how. I said, the purpose of the university, number one, is not to hold on to beliefs, and it isn't to give up beliefs, but it's to test them and re-experience them in a new way, in the light of the wisdom of ancient thinkers to more recent thinkers, like from the Renaissance, and see how their beliefs compare. And they can always hold on to every single belief they have, or they can trade it in or trade up, as we might put it, less religiously. But that was, I think, one of the enjoyable parts of my job there, was that opening week, and parents were very grateful, and to hear me and the deans of the schools, the 4 schools, speak on similar issues. Now, how are we doing now? But you see, that relates to everything we've talked about during this interview.
Hello, hello. Sorry, my key sticks. I said sure does. 631-307-4010. We got 5 more minutes. Please feel free to reach out. And yeah, we could talk about the sunset and sunrise. Whatever you want, doesn't matter. Always a lot to learn from you.
Let's see here. Well, I think the bottom line of what I've been talking about is words, handling of words.
Mm-hmm.
When people understand the sheer power and force
Mm-hmm.
that words can have
Yeah.
in the world, I mean, they may know it, but they may never have expressed that to themselves. One single word said at the right time can put life on a whole new higher level.
Mm-hmm.
Or one single word said at the wrong time or the wrong way can damage a whole relationship, can
Mm-hmm.
damage your whole job,
Yep.
can damage whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And so teaching has taught me greater sensitivity in that area because then you start to look ahead of what you're talking, what kind of stuff you're saying. And your brain, if it's real fast, like mine is, so it's there choosing different sentences to use. So I might look at 20 sentences in a matter of seconds
Yeah.
to see which one is the one that's most appropriate at that moment. I
Well,
think the most important use of that is with family, one's own family. I have a lot of, well, I have my siblings here. I don't think we think of ourselves as up in age. I think we think of ourselves as up in a different part of our youth at this point. And so we take on new projects on a regular basis.
yeah. And I know you are living really close to everyone, right? How close, how far away from each other?
Well, a lot of cousins live about, they're about 50 miles away. That's the closest ones. And then the others are in Los Angeles basin. That could be 140 miles away. And then there's others in the direction of San Diego, and that's
Mm-hmm.
about another 140 miles away. But my father did a lot of civil engineering work in the desert
Yeah.
after he attended college at Caltech. And Caltech is just about 140 miles away from where I now live, and it's in Pasadena. And so he learned how to do surveying. Learned how to operate on mines, gold mines, copper
Mm-hmm.
mines, borax mines, and all those substances are here in California. And he worked in a congenial community of other engineers who are some of the smartest people in the world. Um, Caltech is a center of our understanding of earthquakes.
Yeah.
And I experienced a lot of earthquakes as a child. And
Wow.
so in the South, in Georgia, I experienced a lot of, uh, well, not direct tornadoes, but tornadoes that went through the area. And very interesting because they would come with thunderstorms, a lot of drama.
Yep, I'm sure. Well, Grant, for
And
today, we have to kind of wrap it up. How did you want to leave off with everyone?
I want to leave off with the sunset to take a look at a sunset whenever possible and just
Okay.
take it in for a few moments.
Yep.
Think of yourself looking at as a surfer, deciding on what your best options are for whatever that position is you're looking for, how to bring more harmony into the family of relationships and where you work, things like that. I think that's been the message today that I
Yep.
want to leave
Leave
y'all
with us.
with.
Well, thank
Yes.
you. And how do we contact you for more information, more about your memoirs and everything else? Let us know.
Well, look at Grant D. Venerable, uh, PhD, all lower caps,
Okay.
.com. And there's a whole host of information out there in the trajectory of my interesting life, um, which was good much of the time. But there were challenges
Yeah,
that I
of
would
course.
prefer not to have had. But they help me understand
Yeah.
things I would not have understood had I not rode them out like a good surf wave.
Well, we are excited that you're here. We're going to remind everyone again, Grant, what is the phone number, email address we can contact you at?
Use that email address, Grant D. Venerable. Do you have it there on
Yep. You
a
want me to pull it up for you?
placard?
I wasn't sure if I was allowed
Yeah,
to say it. Okay, I'm not sure. I
yeah.
only have your AOL one, so I don't know the other one. I'm sorry. So I don't know if AOL is too personal.
Oh, Ven2,
Yes.
VENTWO at
V
AOL.
E N
That's what
T
you're talking
W
about.
O
Dot
at
com.
AOL.com.
AOL.com. Right.
Perfect. Good. And
Yeah.
also
Okay.
Grant D Venerable, PhD.com. That's GrantDvenerable, PhD.com. Thank you
Dot
so
com.
much. And
Okay.
looking forward to the next time we connect, sweetheart.
Okay.
Thanks again.
Okay. Thank you,
Bye,
Jill.
everyone. Thank you.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.